Hi, my name is Reed van Brunschot. I am a Peruvian Dutch American artist living in the Los Angeles area, and I work predominantly with sculpture and installation, but also multimedia with video and performance and everything, really.
Hi, I'm Yulia Gasio, and I am a painter and a visual artist. And I work a lot from observation and then bring emotional weight by working with the light logic, saturation, and how it translated into colors.
My name is Brian Sonia-Wallace. I'm a poet. I'm the fourth poet laureate of West Hollywood, and I have a company art practice alter ego called Rent Poet that interviews people and transforms their stories into poems in real time on a vintage typewriter.
I'm Alison Chen. I'm a visual artist working in video and photography. I did my undergrad and graduate career both in photography. In graduate school, I sort of started making videos and performances and really focusing on that. And then now I'm sort of circling back to figuring out how to tie all of those things back together. So I'm working with both mediums and sort of mixing them up and creating some fun stuff out of it.
Really started in theater. I mean, I went to school for sustainable development, so I was doing kind of environmental science, environmental philosophy, but I was like writing and directing theater in all of my spare time, and I got really into immersive theater and site-specific theater, and this idea that like a play could be an interaction between an actor and one person. With what I do, really, it's like, oh, you meet a poet and then they write you a poem, and how many times have you had a poem written for you in your life, and how many people do you meet who are at least like publicly poets? Like, it's sort of an embarrassing thing to be but also kind of a cool one in that I think it makes us ask a lot of questions about things as small, I want to say, as what is art? What counts as a poem? Does it have to rhyme? Or something as kind of big as what is meaning? How do we make meaning out of our lives? And people always are like, oh, I didn't know this was going to be therapy, and they say it as a joke, but it's cool because a poem has these connotations, I think, of like, what are you taking seriously? What do you want to remember? What do you want to like turn over in your head? And then it becomes kind of a stage to do that. And I love the idea that the typewriter is like a little stage. Again, going back to the theater background, and like my fingers are the actors, and we have this tiny play that happens in the interaction with the person.
I'm not from around here. I'm Ukrainian, and in Ukraine, I didn't receive a training in visual arts. I started to be a language arts specialist, and I was supposed to be a K through 12 basic English teacher. And I followed my American dreams to come to the United States. And once I came here, my instructors in community colleges just inspired me to continue with visual arts, told me that it was all possible. Ever since then, I followed the advices, and I earned 2 master degrees in arts, and I don't regret my time spent on any of them.
I am luckily a child of the world, I guess. I was born in Peru, and then I lived in Miami, Florida, and then I lived in Amsterdam, and I've traveled my whole life. And I think what I found most interesting in traveling is within all the different languages that people spoke, when we can't communicate with each other, we putter down to just hand signs and basic words or iconography, and that in a way has turned into like a kind of universal language. I think the very core of my work is that I try to make it accessible. I try to kind of grab onto people initially maybe with humor, but within that there are deeper concepts. Like, it's in a way, more universally accessible to utilize these very basic objects within my artwork. And I draw inspiration from everyday life.
My practice in general focuses on those relationships of the people that I'm closest to, so that tends to range from my husband and my children, and also my more extended family, so the family that I came from, my mother and past mothers in my lineage. In grad school, I started working with the relationship between me and my husband and really focusing on that. At that time we were getting married and thinking about starting a family, and so it was natural to sort of process my life through that lens. And more recently, after becoming a mother, my practice has really shifted to think about my position as a mother, my relationship with my children, and how that is informed by my relationship with my mother, and in turn, her relationship with her mother, and sort of the trickling up from past generations and how that comes to find me in my experience.
I talk about 4 ingredients for a poem because when I teach this practice and people are like, what do you mean sit down and write someone a poem? Like, what does that even look like? And I like talking about the 4 ingredients. I get them from a clown. When I first finished college and moved back to LA, I did social media for like a Russian clown theater and learned a lot from them. But the 4 ingredients are something familiar, so people see themselves in the work. Something strange, so it defamiliarizes it, so it shifts their perspective. Something beautiful, so they know it's a poem. I think contemporary poetry, especially in academia, is very much like, no, we're gritty, we're punk, we're cool. And like, if you're giving the average person on the street a poem and it doesn't rhyme and it doesn't even have a sunset in it, like, that's just mean. Like, give them a mountain, give them the ocean. Like, they did the hard work of sitting down and reading the words. Give them something nice. And the last thing's a joke, so it doesn't take itself too seriously, so that you have this space of lightness, of we just created this in this moment with the 2 of us.
I mean, starting out as a student, you're limited to budgets, and so some of the cheapest things you can use are paper and plastic. But at the same time, conceptually, it's kind of cool to take something that's a very lowbrow material and, give it lots of love and construction and amplify it or rematerialize it to be something else, give it value in a way. It's a silly thing, but I've always been fascinated with Alice in Wonderland, and this kind of shift in scale, and I always thought how wonderful it is. Further, I think it's like being a kid and being ignored by people, like parents and things, and you just feel that small sometimes. When something is very tiny, you have a sense of dominance over it, and when something is very large, it has a sense of dominance over you. And so there is an interaction that happens when a viewer is looking at something, and you as an artist can choose how you want to either amplify an idea or minimize something. It does help that I had a really great professor, strong feminist professor, say, you're a woman, take up space.
Teaching is an extension of my own practice. It's not like I'm changing two heads. What I do in a studio, I bring into my classroom, and then my students teach me back and inform my practice, because they always find the challenge, or they inspire me with what they can do. And I always admire how young they are, how talented they are, and dedicated they are. I feel that I was not in the same headspace when I was their age, and it really inspires me.
The project I'm working on right now is part of a series that stems from looking at candid images of me with my kids, primarily from when they were pretty little. I started making them when my son was born, sort of in the first year of his life, really thinking about how can I evaluate how I'm serving as a caregiver, like how I'm showing up for him. And really the only way that I could think to do that was through photography. So I was like scrolling through mostly phone photos, at that time mostly selfies of like me with my kid, because we were home alone. So often like there's only one of my hands, or my hands are in strange positions as I'm trying to photograph us, and sort of just looking at the gesture of the hands to inform this idea of caregiving. So like not looking at the background and not getting distracted by any other information aside from, how I was physically carrying him. So I would take these images, digitally cut out only the hands, and then superimpose them on a black backdrop. And I started using like a large black cloth that I could sort of sculpt to reference parts of the body in some cases, sort of giving the viewer an idea of, what might have been happening behind the extracted hands, but also adding my own sort of flair to it. So it's not it obviously doesn't represent the photograph exactly.
Really, in the gallery, it's felt like people have wanted to talk about more philosophical concepts. So to talk about history and what does it mean to preserve history and to think about history through art. It's been really cool because the first day I talked to a bunch of students who wanted poems about imposter syndrome and were studying design or studying art and thinking about their futures and thinking about, I think, really like institutionalization and legitimacy. And that's something that I think a lot about, as well as someone who started literally writing poems on the street when no one told me I could, then went on to kind of do more study and get a poet laureate position and all of this stuff, but not having that background in the academy and in, you know, having a teacher come over and like put an A on my work. And how do you find and create value beyond that, I think, is a good question. What's cool about this program, right, is like living artists, they're here, you can talk to them. Their work is literally in conversation with you, with what's going on in your life, and you can both take things from that, but you can also contribute to that. You can also be part of like the inputs for that.
Going to school, when you're in school, it's sort of very easy. There's a schedule, there's a timeline, you know, you have critique every week, and there's semesters, so it's sort of easy to figure out a project, work on that project for, you know, however many weeks there are in a semester, and everything's like very compartmentalized, right? And then when you leave school, you leave that structure. And I think for a while I sort of was very rigid in like working on short projects, and I think only recently I've started to really embrace the idea of like kind of just doing it all, you know, like not worrying if it fits in a box, not worrying if all of the things are working together, and just trusting that like you can find your voice by just continuing to make, and then learning, you know, what serves you and what doesn't serve you.
If you really want it, go for it. It's a long game. You're gonna get a lot of no's, but you pick and choose which one of those you take. But mostly for every no you get, you find a way to do it.
Look at my crow's foot.
Yeah. Well, you want to be happy. And I know it's really difficult to select happiness versus practicality, but I feel your proficiency and your dedication really will work for you and will open doors for you. What I did personally that made a difference, I researched my teachers and I looked into their artwork, making sure that I wanted to be mentored by that person. I wanted to know what they know. And I had a clear understanding what I wanted out of it. I wanted to have that skill. People go into arts for different reasons. They want gallery connections, or they want to go into teaching. Really kind of think it through why you want to go into arts, and break down your bigger goals into more specific goals as you go into it. Like, what do I go next? What do I do? Like, if you decide to go towards teaching, you still need to be part of community. You want to give back. You want to be present in the art scene. You know, you really kind of have to be resourceful. You know, being an artist, it means discipline, but it also means passion, and it all will pay off if you just treat that as a profession. That can carry you through, and then gives you rhythm within your life, and then you can achieve your dreams. I think everybody should come to Brea Gallery and enjoy the community and all of you guys and the artwork and the environment that you create. You guys are amazing here. So, advice, come to the gallery, see the art in person.
Thank you.